We're looking at the Official Guide 2017, question number 7. Now here we have a distance problem. We're traveling from a certain site to the service center. So I'll just call it SC here. So this is where the service center is at. And I'll just draw a line that shows the distance. Now, let's say the total distance is 100d. Now the word d, the initial d, comes from the word distance. And the number 100, it comes from the Ivy approach. Okay, so it says it travels the same distance back and forth and takes the same route. So halfway would be 50d, and the other halfway would also be 50d, because it's traveling the same route back and forth. Now it says on the way back it traveled 10% of the distance. So the way back, 50d times 10% is equal to 50d times 1 over 10, and then we get 5d. So if we add 5d on the way back here, so we're here at this point, 5d on our way back, so the total distance traveled so far would be 50d on the way to the service center and 5d on the way back. So we get 55d. So 55d over the total distance, which we defined 100d, would be 0.55 or 55%. So our answer choice would be choice E. All right, question number 7 from the Official Guide problem solving section. Now they drew a little graph here, so I'm going to draw one for myself. And they drew a curve that goes through this line and this point and curves back up. And on the y-axis, this point is 2, y equals 2, and this point is where y equals 1. And this is where x equals 2. Now the question he said, with respect to the vertical line at x equals 2, the graph is symmetric. This is very important. This means around this line, this vertical line, the graph is symmetric. It's a mirror image. So when y equals 1, here, x equaled 1. And using the same logic, since this is symmetric and it's essentially a mirror image, when x equals 3, then y should equal 1. So the answer is choice E. Now remember, symmetric is very important. Next, we're on problem number 8 in the problem solving section, Official Guide 2015 version. Now we're going to use the Ivy approach, and in the Ivy approach, we're going to use a tool set called the axioms. Now these axioms are tools that we use to translate a question into a mathematical equation, so you must memorize all these. So first of all, if you see words such as what or phrases like what fraction, you can translate these words or phrases into a symbol we call something, such as this, and these are the values we're trying to figure out. And words such as of translates into multiply, is into equal sign, and percent into 1/100. Also, if you see the phrase subtracted from, you replace this with the minus sign. And when you replace it, it's important to note that you change the order of the word that comes before the phrase and after the phrase. So for example, let's say you have a question such as this. So 1/10% of 5,000 is subtracted from, let's say, 1/10 or 1/10 of 5,000. Now let's translate this question into an equation. So you have subtracted from here, so this translates into a minus sign. And we said we change the order of the words that come before and after the phrase. So on this side of the equation, you get 1/10 of, so multiplying sign, and of 5,000. And on this side of the equation, you put 1/10%, so times 1/100 of 5,000, so multiply 5,000 again. Then we get 500 on this side, and minus 10 times 100 is 1,000, so we get 5. So overall, we get 495. So our answer is choice D. Remember how we use the axioms of the Ivy approach. Make sure you memorize these fundamental set of rules. We're on question number 9 of the official guide 2015. Right, so when calculating questions, we need to remember that decimal figures are harder to calculate than fractions. And fractions are harder to calculate than integers. So to make the calculations more simple and easy, we need to convert the numbers, if possible, to fractions or to integers. Now, if we look at our question, we're looking at the value of square root of cube root of 0.000064. Now we're going to try to convert this into fraction. So that decimal figure becomes 1/millionth of 64. And here we have a cube root. And on top of that, we have a square root, right? Now this equals 10 to the power of 6, that's a million, and 2 to the power of 6, which is 64. And since we have cube root, this is the power to the power of 1/3. And again, likewise, to the power of 1/2. Therefore, 10 and 2, 2/10 to the power of 6 to the power of 1/3 times 1/2. And this becomes 2/10 to the power of 6 times 1/6. So our final value is 2/10, which is 0.2, and our answer is 0.2. Now we need to remember that fractions are easier to calculate than decimals.